I want to say that the constitution that we have, which we are operating at the moment, is not like an act of parliament, and therefore its interpretation should be different from how statutes and acts of parliament are interpreted. When we are interpreting constitutions, we need to adopt a broad approach, because constitution is a living organism capable of growth. Constitution is a document that sort of carved the way for the people's search for progress and development. And therefore, you don't interpret constitution strictly in such a way that it will either prevent the country from its progress, its forward march. Now, Article 60 of the Constitution, which is the controversy, states that in the absence of the President or the Vice President, the Speaker of Parliament, it didn't state in the absence, sorry, it said whenever the Vice President and the President are unable to perform their functions, the Speaker shall perform the functions of the President. This provision has been interpreted by the Supreme Court in the case of Asari and Attorney General in 2003, when the late Speaker Peter Amegatcher was sworn in after the President and the Vice President left the jurisdiction. And the interpretation of the Supreme Court is that whenever the President and the Vice President are out of the country, it implies that they are unable to perform their functions. Some of us have our own views about that interpretation, but that is the law because it is the decision of the Supreme Court. Now, nowhere in the Constitution is it stated that multiple oaths ought to be taken. The Constitution simply said the Speaker, before assuming the functions of President, shall subscribe to the presidential or the oath taken by the President. But the Constitution was silent as to whether the oath should be multiple or whenever the President is out of the country. So we need guidance from some other sources. Now, the same Constitution says that our statutes and decrees are all part of the laws of the country. And therefore, when you are taking the Constitution, you also have to look at laws that we have passed in the past, which are part of the laws of the country. And it is where the statutes or the laws are inconsistent with the provisions of the Constitution, then we can then say that the provisions of the statute will take a back stage, and the constitutional provision will prevail. Most of the commentators who were commenting on this, I'm told, never referred to a statute which was passed sometime in 1972. And this statute is the Oaths Act of Ghana, NRC 6. And this was passed as far back as 1972. Now, Section 3 of the Oaths Act specifically talks about unnecessary repetition of oaths. And I will want to quote the provision of Section 3 of the Oaths Act for your benefit. It says, no person who has duly taken the oath of allegiance or the judicial oath shall be required again to take that oath on appointment to any other office or on any other occasion. In effect, once you have taken an oath for a particular office and you are being appointed to perform some responsibilities in that office, you are not obliged to take another oath, a second and a third oath. So that provision in the Oaths Act of 1972, NRC D6, is still applicable because it is not inconsistent with the provision of the Constitution.
So that means the Speaker didn't err?
In our view, the Speaker did not err, and the Chief Justice was right when she refused to swear in the speaker, and the speaker was right when the speaker decided not to take the oath, for the simple reason that the speaker had taken the oath previously. When you look at the position of the vice president, when the president is absent from Ghana, it is the vice president who acts. But whenever the president is absent from Ghana, even for the first occasion, the vice president does not subscribe to the oath. The reason is that on the day of the swearing in of the president and the vice president took the oath of the president. And therefore, because he had taken it at that time, whenever the president is out of the country, the vice president does not take the oath. When you come to the daily activities of the court, the provision of the section 61 of the evidence decree also says that anybody who is required to give evidence in court shall, and it is mandatory, before taking the evidence, required to take an oath. But in practice, when you go to court, you take that oath once. The case may be adjourned several times. You may go to court about 10, 20, or 40 times to give evidence on that same thing. But you take the oath once. When you appear in court, all that you are told is that you are reminded of the oath you took several years or several days or several weeks ago. And so the speaker, in my view, is not required every now and then to take an oath whenever the president is out of the country, because he's taking the oath. So the speaker was right in not taking the oath. Now let's look at the events that happened. On Monday, president travels out of the country for some few hours, and parliament is supposed to be recalled. Ministers who are supposed to be working either out of the country or supposed to be functioning in the various regions have to be recalled, so that the speaker is supposed to take an oath. And then Tuesday or Wednesday, the president travels to another place again. The vice president is absent. Are we saying that the intention of the framers of the Constitution is that wherever our parliamentarians are, the ministers are, we should get all of them, fly, come back, and then come and see, so that the speaker will be taking multiple oaths? I do not think that that is the intention of the framers. So